Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
5:07, it's O'Connor and Company. It's the 7th day of November. It's Thursday, and no, it wasn't a dream. It's real. I know you're all numb still, but it's definitely real. Donald Trump is the president-elect. In fact, we've got some final tallies. Arizona finally called by most news outlets. It's so funny, the ones who were holding out. And Nevada also. So he had a clean sweep of every single battleground state, every state that was in contention. He won each and every one of them, including Nevada, which he did not win last time around, Patrice Onwuka. That gives him a total of 312. That's more than he had when he beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. In fact, that's the most electoral votes for a president, a Republican president, since George Herbert Walker Bush, 1988.
Wow.
Since the Reagan era, we have not had a Republican president win that many Electoral College votes. And, yes, the unimportant popular vote as well. Coming up later this morning, James Rosen of Newsmax covering the White House, where President-elect Donald Trump will be meeting with current President Joe Biden. That's right, everyone. Joe Biden's still the president. 7:05, Brent Pozell, Media Research Center. 7:35, Andy McCarthy. What's the status now of all of the cases against Donald Trump? And then at 8:05, KT McFarland, what's the state of the world? Actually, we have some developments there. Patrice, there's so many things I want to jump into. But yesterday, the leadership of Hamas called for an end to the war with Israel.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. All it took was an election in the United States. Now we'll see what the terms of that election really are, or the terms of that end of the war really are. But that's also, I think, an indication of there's a new sheriff in town. Patrice, I haven't gotten your immediate reaction, though. As someone who works in government, who's someone who works in media, as a mother, as a wife, as an African-American woman, how are you feeling about election 2024?
I am hyped. I almost said happy Friday. No, it is Thursday, but I am so excited. I'm trying to hold back my glee because, I know friends are sad, but listen.
They wouldn't hold back their glee on you, Patrice, just so you know.
Well, the ones who actually have good character and, are real, people of faith who take, their faith seriously. You recognize that at the end of the day, this is an election. It's one day. God is sovereign and he watches over all. But we can disagree. We can see things differently. We can vote for different candidates and still be friends because we have the same core values. But that said, I'm very excited. My husband and I, we actually put out Trump signs on our yard, and we have a corner lot so everybody sees it.
Important for everyone to remember. If they don't, Prince George's County, Maryland. Probably one of the it may even be more lopsided Democrat than Montgomery County at this point. I haven't seen
it. It could be, but you know what? I believe that there are other people who feel the same way that we do. But more importantly, we are turning a new page in this country. There is going to be a level of optimism. The American people spoke, and it was not just every white person or every white male, white female. The coalition that President Trump put together that elected him into office represented people from all backgrounds, religions, races, because it was about class. It was about, where you are financially and who you trust to turn things around when 70% of Americans said this country is on the wrong track. So they spoke clearly and loudly. I'm excited, not just that President Trump was elected, but really that he had massive coattails, and we have a House, a Senate, I believe all of the leading the governorships, majority of them are Republican, winning the popular vote by, I believe, over 5 million. It was a clear, decisive win. And people can now say, okay, let's take a breather and let's root for America, because frankly, for the past 4 years, America has not been winning the way it should be.
Well said. And you're right in terms of breaking down this coalition. It's so funny. If you watched MSNBC yesterday, Patrice, you can imagine what the reaction was. But there was a lot of lashing out from Joe Scarborough's show. That basically Joe picked up Joy Reid's baton from election night and carried it through all day yesterday, where the messaging was that the people who voted for Trump are racist, and they said we have to come to terms with the facts that blacks and Latinos are also racist. And I kid you not. I kid you not. That was the messaging. And, you break this down. First of all, really annoying them was the fact that white suburban women did not do what they were told they were supposed to do.
Oh.
White women in general went with Trump 52% to 47%. And by the way, that's 37% of the electorate. They were very angry at that, that white women just didn't salute and do what they were told. We've heard this all the entire years, really since the Dobbs decision, since 2022. We kept hearing white suburban women. We made a punchline out of it on this program, joking whenever something would happen. Oh, well, there go the white suburban women. Well, white suburban women went with Trump because white suburban women apparently are just as concerned, if not more concerned, about protecting and taking care of and feeding the children who survived birth than they are in ensuring that they can kill children before birth. And that really does sort of sum up exactly the messaging that the Democrats had for those white suburban women: abortion, abortion, abortion. But even beyond that, as a straight white Christian man, I have been the enemy of the people for the last 30 years. And as a Republican, I've been told that the Republican Party is inherently racist because we are the party of straight white Christian men. Romney, Paul Ryan, John McCain, Bob Dole, on and on and on. Even when George W. Bush bent over backwards to have an incredibly diverse and inclusive cabinet with Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell in positions of power.
That's right, I remember.
We were told they were tokens. They were told that it was just window dressing. It wasn't real. So now here you've got Donald Trump putting together a very real coalition of races, of genders, of, by the way, sexual identity, too. He got a big gay vote as well. You look at the numbers, 59% of white men, 52% of white women, 20% of black men, 54% of Latino men. He got the majority of Latino men, 37% of Latino women, and 45% of people of all other races. We finally see this inclusive, diverse Republican ticket led by Donald Trump, as well as ideological diversity with a coalition including Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Elon Musk. And what does the left say? What do Democrats say? What do the Democrat media figures say? Well, all those blacks and Latinos and all of those, they're sexist and racist too. So we can't win. Xenophobic. Which, by the way, tells me, Patrice, knowing that we can't win and that it's impossible to ever win with these people, we need to stop fighting that. It's over.
Exactly.
The identity politics is over.
And thank God for that. I mean, listen, 2020 was so unique in that not only did we have COVID, which is, I believe, what really won President Biden his presidency. It was 100%. COVID.
No one's talking about that. I agree.
Thank you. But in the background, you had the riots of 2020, which were all about racial reckoning in America. And so BLM, which rose to power and became a power center, used that racial politics and that the left has used, hijacked that as a cudgel, as a stick. If you do not vote for, then you are a bad white person. If you do not vote for, that's how they used it. Well, thank God people have finally seen through the emotional manipulation of race and gender. Thank God they have seen through, this idea that somehow they need to window dress or virtue signal to prove that, hey, I have black friends too. No, you don't need to do that.
Thank God,
Just
indeed.
be kind and then vote for what's important, which is your wallet.
Well said. So great. Wait, listen, we haven't heard Patrice, since the day before the election, so we're very excited to get her immediate reaction. I know that it was a Wednesday yesterday for you, so we're going to continue with her reaction. Also, some more breakdown, some more sort of ripple effect from this, I'll say it, landslide victory for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. We've got some updates on the House and on the Senate. Interesting districts that have been flipped for the Republicans in the House. And we'll break that down for you in just a moment. Also, some unintended consequences of the lawfare against Donald Trump that has resulted in some pretty interesting figures out of New York. We'll share all that with you in a moment. But first, It's 5:16. We better get straight to Jamie Whitten.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Let's give you the landslide numbers here. After the call of Arizona and Nevada, it gives Donald Trump 312 electoral college votes versus Kamala Harris's 226. Of course, Kamala Harris conceded the race finally yesterday. She will be acting as vice president on January 6th, certifying the Electoral College results, thus making Donald Trump the actual president of the United States again. But let's move on to the Senate, where we had some calls there. It looked like, even though Michigan and Wisconsin looked very close and possibly flips for Republicans, they've now been called for the Democrats. Tammy Baldwin, the incumbent in Wisconsin, will be returned. She won that race, Patrice, by about 25,000 votes in the Badger State of Wisconsin against political novice Eric Hovde. And then over in Michigan, about as close as you can get, Alyssa Slotkin will become the new senator for that open seat. Mike Rogers, the former congressman and former radio host here at Cumulus Media, he came close but no cigar. The final results here look like it's a less than 20,000 votes total in the state of Michigan. Arizona and Nevada.
I'm surprised that those aren't triggering recounts.
I'm not sure what the state laws are there in Michigan, but I would definitely suspect one in Nevada where Sam Brown is now on the short side of the votes. It looks like by, less than 10,000 votes in the state of Nevada right now. And it looks like Kari Lake is going to go down to defeat in Arizona in that race. McCormick is on the verge of winning, but they still haven't called it yet in Pennsylvania, but that would be a flip, sending Bob Casey into retirement. Should that happen, it looks like the Republicans are going to top out at 53 senators, which is a 4-seat pickup. You know, they were at 49 senators finishing up this last session. All right, over in the House, where there was discussion Tuesday night and even through the day Wednesday that Republicans could lose their majority and Hakeem Jeffries could become Speaker of the House, that is looking less and less likely. Right now, the called races give the Republicans 212 seats. Of course, 218 are needed for a majority. That 212, by the way, includes 2 pickups. They have picked up 2 seats now, it looks like, net. And here's where it's important, what seats they are. I'm looking at these seats, and I'm looking at to pick up one in California, a couple in California, actually, seem to be pickups. And Alaska, you'll remember that because of ranked choice voting in Alaska, the Democrats ended up winning last time around. That aberration has been reversed, and there will be Mary Peltola, the Democrat congresswoman from Alaska, will be sent to an early retirement, serving only 1 term. So that's a pretty interesting pickup as well. And whenever you see pickups in California, it always sort of raises your eyebrows, doesn't it? So
absolutely. That's
interesting and certainly a development worth noting. That's in the House. Demographic breakdowns will continue to come in, and we'll let you know. We gave you the basics in race and gender. One other development, though, that seems very interesting, and that is the growth of the Republican Party in the state of New York, if I may, Patrice, quickly. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes,
we're looking at increases. 21% more Republicans in the Bronx voted for Donald Trump. In Westchester County, 10% increase. All up and down Long Island, which is already kind of a Republican stronghold, they still bettered their numbers by a factor of 10 to 12%. Nassau County, New York, 14%. Queens, the birthplace of Donald Trump, saw a 22% increase in Republican votes. And Manhattan itself, the belly of the beast there for liberal elites, nearly 11% more people this time around voted for Donald Trump than before. What they're calling a red shift. Nearly every county in the greater New York area saw a red shift toward Donald Trump. You remember when it was the bright idea of the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, and the DA of Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, to drag Donald Trump into New York City every single day, take him off the campaign trail, and made him sit in New York in a courtroom to face charges that everyone on the face of it knew were bogus charges, right? And what did Donald Trump do? He said, okay, since I got to be here, I'll just campaign in New York. And he did campaign stuff up and down Manhattan. He went to construction sites. He hung out with workers. He did a rally in Queens. He came back to Madison Square Garden, which I was told was really a Hitler rally that would tank his chances. It's almost like having Donald Trump, forcing Donald Trump to be in New York for half of the campaign against his will, ended up being a boomerang for Democrats. Of course, Democrats still have a majority there, but the Republican coalition has grown, and I think it's because their unfair treatment of Donald Trump.
Well, and that's a big picture, long-term, what happens next story, which is all of these new conservatives, new people who've come into are Trump supporters. Maybe they're conservatives, maybe they're independents, but they've come in, and we need to keep them around.
Yeah.
Not only by delivering on promises that President Trump has made, but then also educating them about why this viewpoint, this philosophy, this limited government perspective, greater individual freedom is the right way for them to prosper. And so that, I take that as a mantle to say part of my job is to make sure that new folks understand why we believe the way we believe and why these policies flow from that. And so, that's the next step. I'll just add to your list here. Republicans now have taken the lead in the number of governorships. So 27 governors are now Republicans compared to 23 Democrats. And I believe, I'm looking for the legislatures, but I believe now the majority of legislatures across the country are also Republican.
Wow.
So talk about massive coattails that President Trump has.
Joe Biden's legacy. It's 5:24.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 5:36, and we are plowing through this Thursday morning at light speed. Coming up at 6:35, James Rosen, White House correspondent for Newsmax. President-elect Donald Trump is going to be visiting Joe Biden and talk about the transition ahead. We'll get James Rosen's take on that. 7:05, Brent Bozell, Media Research Center, talk about how the media reacted and what's next for the media after their huge loss this week. 7:35, Andy McCarthy will talk about the status of the criminal trials against Donald Trump that are still pending. 8:05, KT McFarland on how the world reacts. We continue our full election coverage this morning, this Thursday, with one Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, everybody.
One other quick result that we didn't discuss yet, and I just want to throw it out there real fast because it's my home state of Michigan. The legislature in the state of Michigan has now been flipped to Republican majority.
Fantastic.
That means, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, with 2 years left, is basically a lame duck and will not be able to get anything
Fantastic.
done. And I guess this is what happens when you try to take communion with a Dorito. And
in a very sexualized
very creepy
scenario.
Way. Yeah.
There's
more.
Go ahead. Well, go ahead, Larry. I'll let you finish your intro.
No. I was going to move on. Finish your thought.
Well, what's really important about all of these legislative flips, the governorships, and the House and Senate is that now this is an opportunity to undo a lot of the bad regulatory and legislative agenda under the Biden and radical left that we've seen, everything from energy, the green subsidies, and all of that stuff, and then to put forward something that's positive. We can protect women's sports and get men out of women's sports. We can ensure that men's prisons stay for men and women's prisons stay for women. I mean, there are so many policy areas that need to be tackled, and you could not do that unless down ballot conservatives came out and supported the red ticket.
Absolutely. Agreed. And I implore everyone to read my buddy Kurt Schlichter's column this morning at Town Hall. The headline, "We won and we need to act like it."
Amen.
We'll have much more throughout the morning in terms of what happened yesterday, what the results were, and then what can be done about it as Republicans now have a clear mandate in this country. That said, part of today, as I mentioned, is reflecting on our friends on the left and their reaction to it, because let's face it,
oh boy,
it is entertaining when they fall apart the way that they do, and especially when they still don't get it. I mentioned that on MSNBC that the net takeaway was y'all are still racist and sexist. In fact, the worst among you are those black racists and Latino racists and those female sexists. Well, over on The View, it wasn't much different. Here's Sunny Hostin doing what Sunny does. We'll start with cut one.
I'm surprised at the results, but I'm not surprised. As a woman of color, I was so hopeful that a mixed-race woman married to a Jewish guy could be elected president of this country. And I think that it had nothing to do with policy. I think this was a referendum of cultural resentment in this country.
Cultural resentment. There you go, Patrice.
Oh, that's the new term. So it's not
Yeah.
culture. Well, okay, so not cultural appropriation, cultural
No,
resentment.
resentment. We resent you, which is remarkable. You know, she made the thesis there that it was a mixed-race woman married to a white man. Barack Obama himself was a mixed-race human being. There obviously is no reticence about a mixed-race person. Why can't they recognize that we found her singularly odious, and we found her policies, when she ever dared to talk about them, absolutely abhorrent and not the way we want. And by the way, the administration's policies that she represented were a disaster.
The record she had to run on. Exactly. No, because they can't face up to the fact that she was a bad candidate. She ran poorly. They anointed her. They didn't put her through any fire, nor did the media challenge her whatsoever, and you got a poor result. So they can't handle that. They're going to try and blame, they're going to play the race and the gender card. Sorry, Sonny, it's not working.
Yeah, it's not. But she went on. Cut to the struggle session continued, and we're here for it. It was delightful.
And so I worry not about myself, actually. I don't worry about my station in life. I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember my father telling me many, many years ago that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And now I have less civil rights than I had when he told me that.
Can we just stop?
So again, I'm
all about abortion, all about abortion. They can't come to terms with the fact that nobody sees abortion the way that this very elite Manhattan sort of spectrum looks at it. And listen, I have Republican friends who were right up through Election Day, and as the votes were coming in, who were still sure that abortion was going to be this hidden issue that was going to destroy Republicans for generations to come. And I think they don't understand how real people and normal people look at this thing. And that language that I have lost a civil right. It was never a civil right. It isn't a civil right. It was an aberration of a terrible Supreme Court decision that's been corrected. And now this issue is back in the hands where it belongs of the voters. And this was no, mandate for the pro-life movement, what happened. I don't think abortion really factored in much at all. It's a state issue, and I think people, Patrice, are smart enough to recognize that it's a state issue. Look at what happened in Maryland. As a Marylander, I'm embarrassed and disgusted that our state just opened up brand new avenues of horrific anti-life legislation.
Well, what's interesting about the abortion issue is that it did seemed to play a prominent role in 2022, but that impact that has dissipated, and so I think at this point we're to the point where now it's the suburban moms who people were fearful were only motivated by abortion. They also started getting motivated by a sleeper issue, which is something IWF has been leading on for years, protecting women's sports and women's spaces and the differences between the sexes. That became a rallying cry for a cultural rallying cry for a lot of female voters who are like, you know what, if I need to get an abortion, I can, but that's not what's motivating me. I am worried that my daughter is losing her access to opportunities and scholarship because of men posing as women.
Right.
So, those are some of those sleeper issues that also played a role here, greater than abortion might have.
That's an interesting point, and I want to expand on that, because I slightly disagree with you, but not too much, because I love you dearly. You know that. So we're going to continue discussing this in a moment through the eyes of The View, 543.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
And so I worry not about myself, actually. I don't worry about my station in life. I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future.
Okay,
especially
Sonny, cry more. Everybody they were all dressed in black too, literally, like they were going to.
Oh goodness.
Listen. The abortion issue is going to be a political issue. It's going to be on the ballot, literally, either through those running for office or sometimes, in the case of Maryland this last time around, an actual ballot initiative. So we got to get used to it. This is what life after Roe v. Wade looks like. When we said it should be a state's issue, this is what it looks like. And it's not always going to be pretty. But we wanted the people to have a say, not, 9 Supreme Court justices who aren't held accountable. So I recognize that abortion is an issue on the ballot. But I just want to say, first of all, when you look at 2022, I think that it was important on the ballot that year, insofar as those states that had state initiatives, it did drive turnout. But if you look at the state of Florida, they had a drastic abortion initiative on the ballot, and it went down to defeat. In 2022, Ron DeSantis, Mike DeWine in Ohio, and a handful of other governors who were running statewide, they were also running right after putting restrictions on abortion in those states, and they won overwhelmingly. So it's a mixed bag in 2022. I think the real issue in 2022 was the youth vote. If you look at the difference between 2022 and 2024, the difference is young voters that came out.
Wow.
And I think that's what then Trump appealed to those young voters. He actually won young voters or came within 6 points of winning, which is something a Republican never does. I'm not discounting how important the abortion issue is. Republicans need to get better talking about abortion going forward. And maybe the formula right now is the way Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did it, which is to just say, hey, it's a state issue. We're running for federal office. It's not even going to be a problem. Not even going to be an issue for us. Maybe that's the secret sauce for now. I don't know.
That's only going to work, though, at the top of the ticket. If you're even a senator or, and obviously everybody else, down ballot, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. I do think it's important, though, to point out how extreme the left is on abortion.
That's right.
And that's part of it. And so recognizing that the electorate is not that extreme, even if they are open to some level of that.
You're right. More on The View, though, if we can pivot back to their delicious tears and angst.
Weeping and gnashing of teeth.
And their denial. The absolute. Here's Whoopi Goldberg, who's just in denial over who they are and what they did.
We said to people, vote. We didn't tell people who to vote for.
Right.
We just said, go out. Well, yes, but I did not.
But they're acting like they didn't. They didn't lobby in any way. Are you kidding?
I mean, they did not have President Trump on that table with them. They had Kamala Harris, and when she came out, it was like Jesus walking into the room for the first time at the wedding.
They never had one credible Republican or conservative voice at any time on that panel. And
so
Whoopi Goldberg
understood.
She wouldn't even utter Donald Trump's name. She would constantly refer to him as you-know-who. Give me a break there. So. Rick Klein, I got to hand it to him. I've known Rick Klein for a while. He's the political director for ABC News. Whenever the View goes off the rails, I always tweet at him on Twitter saying, hey, they're your team. This is ABC News. Well, he actually showed up yesterday on the panel, and he threw a little cold water on the proceedings.
2 daring rescues.
No, this would be cut 6 is what we're looking for here, Michael. If we could, cut 6.
2 daring rescues.
Well, that's weird. Okay, cut 6 is clearly not working. All right, how about cut 7? How about that one?
There were some indications that maybe this would be the big thing, but it certainly wasn't a salvation for Democrats.
That talking about the abortion issue. And cut 8, Rick Klein.
To me, the voters were out there. It's just the Democrats didn't find them. The Republicans did.
And he also said that abortion was not the motivating issue for women this year that many people thought they would. That's the cut that we're missing here. All right, we'll straighten that out, and we've got more to come. It's 5:53.